Thanks for listening to the FU Cancer Podcast. My name is Christina Rollins. I'm a dietitian, mom, and wife to a pretty awesome cancer survivor. We said FU to cancer nearly 25 years ago and are still going strong. I'm excited to share the FU Cancer movement, where we are a community of survivors, fighters, caregivers, and advocates, connecting our shared experiences, passion, and determination to live a holistic and well-balanced life. Stay tuned, because we've got a lot to talk about. Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the FU Cancer Podcast. Today we're focusing on pediatric leukemia and the unique challenges that families face during the maintenance phase of treatment. It's a long journey, and even after the most intense parts of treatment are over, the work of healing is really just beginning. So joining us today from Northern Texas is a registered dietitian nutritionist, Rachel Hill. Rachel specializes in pediatric oncology and has a passion for helping kids and families rebuild strong, healthy foundations during the maintenance phase of cancer treatment. Rachel, welcome to FU Cancer. We really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us exactly, what do we mean when we say the maintenance phase of pediatric leukemia, and why is the 1-year mark in particular such an important turning point for these patients?
Sure. So first, I think it's helpful to distinguish that here we're talking about acute lymphoblastic leukemia. There are a few other types of leukemia that occur in children, but acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or ALL for short, is by far the most common in children. And survival rates are really good, but treatment is long, and the first year can be really brutal on children and on their families. And so I like to think of ALL therapy as being broken into two main parts. Intensive therapy, which includes phases like induction, consolidation, interim maintenance, delayed intensification. And then that's all about 1 year. And then we transition into this phase called maintenance phase. And that starts about 1 year into treatment, and it lasts nearly 2 years. And things are kind of starting to normalize during that phase of treatment. And it's really important for resetting some normalcy and some behavior whenever it comes to nutrition and physical activity, so that these kids are really primed well for survivorship.
So what kinds of nutrition and physical changes do you typically see in these kiddos after the first year of their leukemia treatment?
Goodness, these kids can really experience so much during the first year of leukemia treatment. It's just such a long haul. The chemotherapy knocks out their immune systems for long periods of time, so they're at very high risk of infection. That means that if they develop any fever, they have to be admitted to the hospital almost every time that they have a fever. And so they often lose their appetite, they're at high risk for infection, or maybe they have a raging appetite because they're on and off of steroids. They can develop mucositis or mouth sores. They can have issues with constipation, or on the other end, they can have issues with diarrhea or nausea, vomiting, really the whole gamut. Some additional challenges that are kind of unique to ALL therapy and the drugs that they see during that chemotherapy protocol is that they can develop neuropathies, pancreatitis, blood sugar concerns, high blood pressure, high blood lipids like triglycerides. And while that doesn't fully capture it all, that kind of gives a little bit of a picture of all the things that these kids can experience that first year.
Well, we know that in a healthy pediatric population, establishing healthy habits is super important to their long-term, nutritional status. So why is the maintenance phase such a key opportunity to really reestablish these healthy habits in the kids?
Yeah, so the maintenance phase is comprised mostly of oral chemotherapy, and there are many things that begin to transition back to some new type of normal during that phase. Children start to grow their hair back, they often return to school, and often their appetite comes back and stays back. This phase, like I mentioned, lasts about 2 years or so. So it's really essential that we're attentive to what types of things are um, going into their bodies and how they're starting to move during this phase, because research has shown us over time that this is a phase in treatment where kids, if we're not careful, can gain a lot of weight really rapidly, particularly within the first few months or 6 months of maintenance therapy. They've had such a brutal phase in their intensive therapy that we've gotten really lax sometimes with what they eat just to make it through. And whenever their appetite comes back and stays back, if we don't make some modifications, they can really be at risk for a lot of late effects. And so, despite really great outcomes from their disease, there can be a lot of long-term outcomes that these kids really struggle with, like a lot of the diseases that Americans don't usually struggle with until later in life, like diabetes and heart disease. But the wonderful thing is that research shows that families are often open to intervention during this phase, and kids and families are often responsive to nutrition counseling during this phase. And when they really know about the risks and what they can do to reduce their child's risk of long term concerns, families are quick to take action. And we don't need to change everything all at once, but really it's trajectory setting during this phase.
So, what are the most common nutrition challenges that your patients do face in this phase? And then how are you helping their families address them?
So I mentioned concerns about rapid weight gain, heart disease, diabetes. Two other things that I haven't mentioned are weak bones and low muscle mass. And those are two things that I'm really passionate about in this population. The chemotherapy itself can contribute to weak bones, but thankfully, we keep building strong bones until late 20s or about 30. So these kids have plenty of time ahead of them to build healthy bones as long as they have the right fuel and right components in their diet and activity habits, like calcium and vitamin D, and getting back to age appropriate activity to build strong bones. And another issue that we can see is low muscle mass. And this is kind of a new area of exploration in pediatric oncology or pediatric leukemia. But our facility has an in-body machine, which is a body composition analyzer. And it's been so fascinating to put particularly like older kids and teenagers on this machine and see what their muscle mass is doing, what their body fat is doing, so that we can try to rebuild muscle mass. A lot of times, teenagers and really all of the kids, but teenagers are the easiest ones to get on that machine from a cooperation standpoint. And we see that they have a lot of rebuilding of muscle mass in their legs that they need to do. Um, we also sometimes see really high body fat on those scans, high body fat that you wouldn't necessarily anticipate with their weight. You know, it may be a healthy weight, but on the inside, they have low muscle mass and high body fat mass. And so you can only imagine that that might lead to some quick development of some metabolic concerns in their childhood or early adulthood that we can try to start to impact now. So overall, I think having early conversations and focusing not on weight, but on diet quality and rebuilding activity habits can go a long way in improving their nutritional and physical health.
I think this is a super interesting perspective because we hear a lot of criticisms on BMI or body mass index, and that it's not indicative of a person's health, right? It's just one measure, but it's usually the other, where somebody has a high BMI, but it's because they're very muscular. But in this case, you're seeing the opposite. It's a healthy BMI, but maybe they're not quite as healthy as they need to be. I mean, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, yes. And so it is truly the BMI might not be an accurate indicator, but sometimes it's underestimating their metabolic risk. A child could have a normal BMI and actually be at quite high metabolic risk because they have a very high percent body fat and very low muscle mass.
So, what are some practical steps that families can take to improve the diet quality during this maintenance phase of therapy?
Yeah, so, I always like to think about the foods that they're eating and really kind of think through, hey, does this food even fit in a food group? So, for instance, spicy chips. I joke sometimes that that's like the official chip of childhood cancer. Our
Mhm.
kids absolutely love them. They're crunchy, they're salty, they're savory, the spicy and tangy just kind of hits their taste buds and they can actually taste it. So while maybe some adults might have different experiences with taste changes, kids really crave that salty, spicy, savory, tangy flavor profile. But I talk to the kids about, okay, which one of these food groups do you think that that fits in? And there's not really one that they fit super well into, or sweet tea, for example, trying to help them see, okay, is it a fruit? Is it a vegetable? Is it a whole grain? Is it a protein? And when we realize, oh, there's no group that we can put this in, okay, this needs to be one of those things that we eat less often. And then on the other hand, just really focusing on whole foods, okay, which fruits or vegetables do you like? Pull out a colorful paper that has a bunch of different colors of fruits and vegetables on it and identify, okay, they like strawberries and they like green beans and they like grapes. Perfect. Let's start there. Or they're doing great with yogurt or they love eggs. Okay, so let's just start working toward more whole foods, fewer processed snacks, getting back to eating together as a family potentially, getting away from being the short order cook for so long, buying fewer snacky foods, making whole foods be a snack option. So again, I really always emphasize we are never going to be perfect whenever it comes to our diets, not a single one of us. And so it's all about which way are we headed with this. And as long as we're headed in the right direction, we're going to be further along 10 years from now than if we never talked about it.
So it sounds like a lot of what you're recommending, that's really just a recommendation for everybody, right? It's just we're reintroducing the normal healthy eating patterns, right, for these families.
Yes. And a lot of times it's helpful for the families too, because they've been through it. They may not be experiencing all of the same side effects, but they've had long clinic days. They've
Mhm.
had to change up their job. They've got other kids that they're juggling. And so sometimes it's literally just, setting a little goal to say, hey, let's start having you plan 1 or 2 meals per week. How can I help you do that? Or, okay, let's think through making a grocery list. What does that look like for you? And really emphasizing this is a whole family thing. This isn't just this kid that needs to make all of these changes. These are just normal, healthy approaches that we could all work on.
So I want to circle back to your comments about the muscle weakness and leg weakness in particular. So, how do you approach reintroducing physical activity in a kiddo who does have deconditioning or fatigue? Because I can imagine if their muscles are weakened, they probably don't feel like doing a whole lot, right? Like that's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Our team really takes an approach from the very beginning. We try to keep kids active. At diagnosis, all of these kids are meeting a physical therapist and they can learn about the benefits of physical activity and play. Our physical therapy sessions are happening in the hallway where kids are bowling or, leaning down to fish with a little fishing pole to get little magnets. And so kind of incorporating squats into a game that the kid can play. They teach them how to incorporate that at home, and we really try from the start to encourage keeping them out of bed, moving around. What are some safe active things that you can do when they are feeling well? And so, really, a big part of it is freeing these families up to know, okay, you can do some active things during treatment. Here are some ideas. Um, a lot of times the little kids have a little bit less of a hard time, not always, but they usually have a less complicated course than some of the teenagers. But a lot of our older kids really struggle with deconditioning. And so sometimes we're starting from the beginning during this maintenance phase where we're saying, okay, taking a deep breath, turning a corner, let's get you connected to physical therapy. Or maybe it's talking through and saying like, okay, what did you love to do before diagnosis? What are some things that we could do now that might make it possible for you to participate in that next season or next year? There's a couple of nonprofits that do like a cancer rehab program virtually. One's called 1330. It's a nonprofit that has this online rehab program that I've referred several patients to that are specifically for people who've gone or teenagers and young adults that have gone through this. So a big part of it is just keeping it on the forefront, trying to connect it with things that they enjoy doing. And sometimes even just addressing the psychosocial aspects that might have them um, not wanting to get out of bed.
And have you found any strategies in particular that work best to make movement fun and really sustainable for the kiddos as they're recovering?
Yeah, so thankfully, well, a lot of it is about play and building a routine.
Mhm.
And so I like to encourage families during this phase of treatment to start thinking through re-enrolling in a favorite sport or activity. They still have their Metaport, but for the most part, it's not accessed. And so they can do low things that aren't super high contact. For older kids, it's a big functional component. So, for example, it can be helpful to identify, okay, what you're getting ready to go back to school, what's that going to look like from an activity standpoint? What do you want that to look like? Or what could you do before that hasn't quite come back yet, like running or maybe jumping, and helping them realize that we can get there. Giving them the hope that that's not gone forever, giving them the confidence to don't start there. We need to really work on rebuilding those muscles. And sometimes that's physical therapy. Sometimes that's just moving your body more and gradually working up toward it, maybe taking the stairs more often or doing some wall sits or some squats or something just to re-engage those muscles. But one of my favorite stories that I sometimes will share with patients is that last fall, I think I was watching my son play football, and I heard the announcer come over the sound booth or whatever, and he said a name of a kid on the other team that had just made a tackle. And I almost couldn't believe my ears because it was such a unique name that I just had this feeling that it had to be the same kid. And so I looked all in the crowd, and I found the mom of this kid that we had actually treated here for his leukemia. And he was out on the football field doing what he loved, looked so incredibly strong. And I just love to see kids absolutely thriving. It takes time to rebuild, but I think it's so important just to connect the idea that, hey, it's possible. You're not always going to feel like this. Let's start making some strides forward, taking the turn, doing the long, hard work, but you can get stronger. And I think that you will.
So, how do you help caregivers in particular who are afraid of pushing too hard? Or maybe they're looking at the child today and thinking about how they used to be, physically, whatever, and they can see how much they've lost and how far they have to go back. Like, how do you
Yeah.
help them help the other people?
Yeah, sometimes it's just a big component is that it's so helpful to hear it from their medical team, to hear us validate, we're coming out of this really intense phase. We're taking a turn into, ramping back up into normalcy. As parents, we kind of have that gut instinct of like, we don't want to make something harder long term by not pushing enough now. And so sometimes just hearing it from our providers and from myself and other members of our team to say, okay, now is the time to just start putting on a little more gentle pressure. Let's start talking about diet quality first. Let's start talking about activity, and then we're going to talk about it again, and then we're going to talk about bones. And guess what we talk about when we talk about bones? Activity. And then we're going to talk about heart health, and we're going to talk about activity. So it's going back over those and helping them see that they are making progress slowly but surely, and helping them set that next goal to push a little bit harder so that they aren't pushing too hard, but that they know the right amount of pressure to apply. Sometimes it's also making sure that other caregivers are part of the conversation. And so there have been a couple of instances where the grandparents are extremely instrumental in taking care of this child. The parents have had to go back to work. The grandparent is there, and they are just all about the ice cream sandwiches or whatever it is that the kiddo just wants to eat. And so sometimes it's, hey, let me give you an extra copy of this because we've made handouts that explicitly talk through, here's where we are, here's the concerns if we don't make any changes, and here's some steps that we can start making forward. Um, so I think a big part of it is just having those open conversations, having intentional time to talk about it, and hearing it multiple times from multiple people.
Well, you've given us so much great information to think about. So, thank you for all of this info and experience that you've shared. Just in our last few minutes together, what advice would you share with caregivers who want to support their child's recovery, but they really don't know where to start?
Yeah, so first of all, congratulations on making it to where you are today. Every kid that's fighting along this journey has people who love them, who are right alongside them, holding them up and helping them. And so just know that before you do anything, know that you're already doing something. And then beyond that, I just encourage families to start somewhere. That's what we all do. We're juggling all these things, and then we realize, oh, you know what? I need to start doing X, or I need to start doing Y. Every little step in the right direction gets us further in the right direction one week 1 month or 1 year from now. And kids in this phase should follow, like we talked about earlier, just all the healthy dietary guidelines for healthy kids. And so, for some practical ideas, myplate.gov has some really helpful resources. And then I always just say it is sometimes the best thing to just start simple, thinking through, okay, how nourishing is this food that I'm putting in my body? Does it fit into a food group, or is it one of those things that I need to have less often? Is it how many fruits and vegetables is my kid eating? Is it anywhere close to what they should be having? And again, that myplate.gov can be a helpful indicator of how many should they be having. Are they drinking a ton of sugary drinks? Okay, let's switch over to, doing less of that, or switching over to water, or making some fruit infused waters. So, and I think also we all need to hear it. When we veer off, of course, be gracious with ourselves, because life is chaotic outside of a cancer diagnosis, but it's so much more chaotic sometimes whenever you add that into the mix. And so, be gracious with yourself and just make sure that you um, just take that one step forward at a time, realizing that you might take a couple of steps backwards, but just keep getting back at it. And every little bit helps the kid get to a healthier place as you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for sharing your experiences with us today. Really appreciate the information and all you're doing for the cancer care community.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And listeners, to learn more, be sure to visit our website, fucancer.health. We have a ton of educational content that's being curated by our cancer care experts, so be sure to check that out. Until next time, I'm Christina Rollins. Thanks for listening.